So the final natural has finally been selected. Let's do this. Earth Island is a really cool song to end off the natural side of things. It's got some really interesting high points and some shocking picks for low points. Overall, this island has been a highly regarded one within the community because of its tone and atmosphere. But how well does that carry in terms of YSM? Let's find out together, shall we? The third worst monster on the island is our consistent bottom Wubbox. Really, the only good thing about Wubbox at this point is the fact that I only ever have to talk about this abomination one more time before leaving it in the dirt where it belongs. Like usual, it doesn't do anything interesting, makes no effort to blend in with anybody else, lacks focus of any sense of rhythmic interest on its own, and generally is just way too loud to function in the very sinister song that is Earth Island. Granted, it's not the worst Wubbox, but it's still something I just really want to mute and get off the song before I subject my ears to this awful, awful noise. Number 2 is one I begrudgingly put here because I seem to be in the minority that thinks the way I do. Talker is the sole reason why the weirdos don't really function all that well on Earth Island. Whenever it does the funny thing with Stew Orb, it's fine and all, but whenever it's given an actual sense of spotlight, things just start falling over really quickly. The biggest example of this is the infamous way it plays in the very end of the song, clashing horribly with Cybop and ruining both monsters in the process. Granted, Stew Orb is also guilty of this, but it is Talker that set up that whole thing in the first place, so yeah. Alright guys, number 1 is an out there pick. It's a monster that's small, comes in more than one, and is a disappointment on every island it's on. That's right, it's Thumpies. Yeah, for once Dipsters aren't in the bottom because of reasons I'll get into later, and instead it's going to be Thumpies. And I am going to take this segment to completely and utterly decimate the monster known as Thumpies. First off, let's think about Thumpies in the context of the monster itself, that being a reference to an older BBB game by the same name, Thumpies. If you don't know this game really well, let me just tell you that it has some wild choices for instrument selection. We could have had a monster that sound could have been grunts and snarls if the stars aligned, but instead we got a very generic instrument in a timpani. Well, alright, I can roll with that because the timpani is an amazing instrument, and it could really do some dope stuff on the islands that it was placed on. Then comes Cold Island, and it literally just repeats what Mammoth does. Well, okay, that island sucks in general, so I guess that's excusable. It's a triple, so it still has one more island to make up the difference. Then we get to Earth Island, and this song is so perfect for a timpani to take center stage. Just listen to it. This song is super ominous and sinister, and a deep, bellowing drum line would be so amazing sounding if they just made it focus. So you finally get it, and wow, it's Mammoth again. Not only is it Mammoth, it is an inferior version of it in every conceivable possible way, since it's shockingly quiet, barely bassy at all, and plays less tracks. And it just keeps going like that. Gold Island, literally just Mammoth and quiet. Tribal Island, this is an exception to the Mammoth thing, but it's still insanely quiet, so it doesn't matter. Continent is literally just Mammoth again, but at least it has the addition of 1 second track that plays in the loudest and most complex verse, so it's impossible to hear. Cave Island is then the last island it's on, and wow, it's literally nothing again. Thumpies is straight up the worst natural. I can't even bother with this thing. It is so disappointing in so many ways, since this is one of the most apparent cases of just an awful, poorly thought out monster that there ever has been. I decided to talk about it on Earth Island because 1, we're running out of islands to talk about it on, and 2, this is the most egregious case of how awful this thing is. It wholeheartedly deserves the spot as the worst monster on this list. Dishonorable mentions include the following monsters: Dipsters are still something I'd rather not have in the song, but honestly, when they are in the song, I kind of vibe with them. They're not going to gain a special spot in my heart or anything, but they're just harmlessly playing the chords of the song and leaving room for the others to play as well, and I like that. If BBB tried doing Dipsters more this way, I could see a potentially good group in the future. We're just not there yet. Furcorn is literally just the same melody as another monster, and that monster does it infinitely better. Its voice and tone just don't really match the feeling of that verse as a whole, and as Light Island has recently shown me, it would have worked so much better if it was placed in the verses after, since it holds notes really, really well. Tweedle's still got the ever-present issue of just having a really unflattering singing voice that fails to impress at all. It's not anything bad, but it's nothing to really write home about, and it can get grating after a while. If this was before the Weirdos were added, I could easily see Cybop getting a minimum of an honorable mention, but the Weirdos have completely ruined the chances of ever getting it there. The issue is, like I said with Talker, they just play together like ice cream and ketchup. Well, Earth Island has some wicked nasty bottoms, but the interesting thing about them is the fact that they really don't affect the song at all, or only affect the second half of it, which means there's potentially an entire first half that could be really good. Let's see if that's the case. Number 3 on our best list is the only time we've ever really seen Reedling in a top spot. It's well deserved too, as this Reedling is one of the best around. It adds a perfect rhythmic punch to Quarrister, and it's just a really well crafted set of tracks that are as enchanting as they are menacing. This song carries a really dire tone to its melody, and Reedling plays a huge part in that. It has a boatload of stuff that it adds to the song when it's added, and I consider it one of the better woodwind tracks in MSM's history. Number 2 is shockingly the only true melody that's in the top 3, Dandidoo. There wasn't all too many monsters on this island that I could say have a better or even comparable melody to that of Dandidoo, and overall I just think this track is really swell. The voice actress is the most confident with this monster when doing this track, and it really shows in the performance. I really prefer the dire and dark sounding Dandidoo to the giddy and upbeat one, since whenever this monster tries to do happy, it ends up going nasally and shrill. Bottom line is, this Dandidoo is the textbook example of how one should go about doing a monster like this, since it works really well in the verse it plays in. Number 1 is once more a really obvious choice, since nothing else even remotely comes close to it in terms of quality. Quarrister. Before getting into why this monster is so amazing, can I just say from an artistic standpoint that this design is so inspired and creative? Like, take a second to really think about what you're looking at, and you'll see what I mean. Anyway, to get back on topic, Quarrister is the best boss monster, hands down. Nothing even comes close. It has the most consistently best performances of the bosses, and Earth Island is just astoundingly perfect for this beast of a monster. Having this deep, gothic sounding choir is so inspired for the quad of Earth Island, and I live for it. This thing has 2 tracks that play for the first half of the song, and they both work tremendously well with the others, giving them just enough room to work with, while also managing to take attention whenever there's downtime. It really does feel like Quarrister is leading the song, which just feels right for a boss monster. Honorable mentions include the following monsters. All of the percussion on this island is notably good on their own, but above and beyond when they're all together. From the simplest of noggins to the complexities of Drumpler, they all come together to make one amazing percussive line. Shrub gets its own spot separate from the other percussionists simply because it's the only one that still works amazingly well when separated on its own. It's just a really good track in the song, nothing else to really say. Mammoth and Potbelly have that opening on lockdown, they work so well together. If Quarrister and Reedling are the song's hook, these two are the bait. Stewart's actually a very well done weirdo track in the first half, I must be fair and admit that much. I still would prefer if Where didn't exist, but I do like this one. Well, that's Earth Island, and overall I'd say the island is pretty good. It's a song that just gets worse as it goes on, since the first verse is easily the best and the last verse is easily the worst, with each verse in the middle leading in that direction. However, there's one big elephant in the room that I need to address. This song is really short. There's no reason to this either. It's long in the soundtrack and any remix BBB has ever released, so it's baffling why the in-game version is just so short. This is an issue because it's one of the reasons the bad tracks are so bad on this island. For example, if Talker had a verse where it could just play separate from Cybop, it'd make both of those monsters not bad. It's the fact that they play together that makes them bad. The length of this song is a really big issue that I hope they fix in some later update, because I just want to enjoy a song that's worth enjoying fully. Other than that, this island's fine, the monsters are fine, everything's just fine. It's a very average sounding song with some fairly impressive high points and not too overwhelming downsides. We're almost done with these official islands in YSM, and unfortunately I never hit that like goal on Spookbeat to do another fan island, so it'll be a bit before I touch back on that subject. Maybe after we're done with official islands, I'll take a much needed vacation, since this series can be pretty draining. Well, we'll power through it and get to the end together, and like always, I'll see you all in the next video. Alright, so we got Earth Island. We all ranked it about a really average area, and I think that lands it really close behind Gold. I think it's a solid 5 out of 5 island. It's great, but again, there's a lot of issues with it. I'd say Air ranks higher simply because it just has more. It's not that Earth doesn't do a lot with what it's given, it's just that the short length of the song means that it doesn't have a lot of room to do that stuff, while Air is a really long song, meaning a lot more interesting developments can unfold. It's really just a matter of preference where you would place Earth and Air against each other, but in the sense of YSM, I'd say Earth is a solid 5 out of 10 song. It's got some good starts and really not good ends.